Well, let's speak now to Mike Ingram, who's a senior market analyst at ActivTrades. Welcome to the programme, Mike. What do you make of this report?
Well, it's clearly a very troubling report, but perhaps not totally surprising given that the most recent assessment of the global economy from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, is that perhaps a third of the global economy is going to be in recession during the course of 2023. And clearly in that sort of environment, and you referred earlier to high and persistent uncertainty in economic prospects, it's nearly always the case that it's the poorest countries, the poorest parts of society, which tend to suffer the most. We've already seen the global economy in a stagflationary environment. That's a combination of relatively high inflation and relatively low economic growth, perhaps for the first time in many countries since the 1970s. And we've seen how this has had a knock-on effect on staples such as food, energy, and in some countries staples. And of course, these are the very items that impact the lives and well-being of the poorest in society.
Indeed. And yet we also hear, Mike, that this is a kind of a strange shaped recession, that we're heading into it with unemployment at record lows. Perhaps that's mainly a developed economy, a developed world phenomenon. How do you see that playing out over the next year or so?
Well, there are some long-term and relatively short-term trends in play, I think. I mean, first of all, one could argue in terms of the long trends, the age of globalization has come to an end. I mean, it's certainly slowed down in the post-financial crisis environment over the last 10 to 15 years. Now it seems to have not only come to a juddering halt, but perhaps helped by COVID, it's now going to reverse. And of course, globalization has been one of the things credited with lifting a lot of people out of poverty and putting a lot of people into useful economic employment. And then in terms of the shorter term trends, of course, you've got issues such as COVID. You had China until relatively recently initiating a zero COVID policy. Thankfully, we seem to be moving away from that now. And of course, Russia-Ukraine looms large, particularly in terms of the impact it's had on energy inflation and food price inflation. So, if you take all these things combined, then, you've got some pretty stiff headwinds. And on top of that, you've got policies perhaps in the West, such as raising interest rates, which are helping to hold back investment and helping to put a lot of very vulnerable people out of work.
Okay, Mike Ingram, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.